opportunity to invite my colleague Rene Hohmann, who is from Cities Alliance, to share. Cities Alliance had done a breakthrough type of research on intermediary cities. Though we have been pondering, do we call it secondary cities, intermediary cities, human settlements? But put aside the concept, what City Alliance had to maybe highlight in terms of some entry points that could be very relevant to advance this important topic. So, Rene, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you so much, Remy. And I would like to thank you for the host for inviting the Cities Alliance Secretariat also to this webinar. You note if you see my the slides, then I can know that the technique, yeah, it is, okay. So, Remy, if the role of the webinar was to raise the appetite for more discussion on the topic at the Africities Summit in Kisumu, I would like to already congratulate you of having achieved it. So I'm up for it. It is very engaged, and I'm looking forward to that. I will shorten my presentation and jump here, and please apologize, but I'm also in a little bit of a time constraint now. I would like to start with a challenge. What we see in our work in Africa is that many development partners and governments tend to perceive cities as isolated entities rather than actors within a system and networks. And I used here the image of a flying saucer, of a floating city that was pictured in 1922, that cities that are not embedded in the systems, in the food systems, and any kind of relationships to each other. And I think here lies a problem. It lies a problem in presenting data, collecting data. If you don't ask the questions how cities and their regions are connected, you are in a static mindset of collecting data. And I will show you later what it leads to. But I think the most important part is that there are policy gaps among national responses to sustainable urbanization and economic development. And if we don't think about the relationships between the cities, how they relate to each other, what the flow of goods, services, people, information makes out of economies, you offer or you encourage a competition between types of cities and follow older conceptualization of just finance growth poles, and the rest will follow. I think this creates a winner-takes-all situation in investment decisions that is against our, I think, common agenda to leave no vulnerable people and places behind. I'm not going into the depths of this one, but we can say that we are, since the 1990s, we look at a rich legacy of strategies and conceptualization of how cities are interlinked, and also on the agenda of development partners that make them even, as kind of a backbone of their engagement strategy. We also looked at different types of cities, but at its core lies a particular interest to have cities to better benefit from the flows of goods and services and people in advancement of the territories for their social and economic development. And why do we think? I think it is now an acute time and opportunity to rethink and foster such a perspective. We've heard in the start from Jean-Pierre and Raf, and also from Uma, that given the climate crisis and the current global economic restructuring in a COVID-19, I think, reality, we face an historical junction and opportunity, an opportunity to go beyond growth policies depending on exogenous growth principles. In other words, competing cities and regions to become part of that global economy and supply chain. I think a system of cities approach can not only inform a national spatial economic development plan, but also very locally determine how rural and urban linkages can be strengthened and what kind of investment can animate the flow of goods and services between them as a part of a national and regional supply chain. But now from that philosophy, and that's why I was actually invited to think what needs to happen. I think we need to shift in planning and policy to understand each particularity of national system. Do we have clusters of cities that around metropolitan regions that trade, that encourage thinking about exactly that static mindset in data collection? It is actually not important how big your city is. It is important how many people are at the daytime and at the nighttime, to see what kind of services do you provide actually for the surrounding areas, what kind of transport system we need. Thinking about corridors, and here thinking not only the corridors between countries, but also what role plays the cities cross-borderly to inform that trade. But we have also, and that I would like to debate somewhere else, there are also isolated cities. One could argue that to become intermediary, you need to intermediate. You need to already have the function And if you don't, you're isolated. And I think these, we need just to acknowledge, happens as well many times. There are also patterns, I think, again, to think about the flows between the cities, but also the cross-border significance. I was alluding to it just a minute ago on the cross-national significance of those interrelationships. Now, let's come quickly to an example, and this is very complementary to the first segment. Here, I would like to just throw in 3 examples that please approach me if you need further information. Here's the first example that is currently on behalf of the government of Kazakhstan implemented by the World Bank and the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank that looks at hard and soft infrastructure along a corridor, along the coastlines. But the interesting point is here in that project that it not only looks at connectivity, better street networks, associated infrastructure for mobility, but also the productivity of the cities themselves. What role does urban spaces play? The access to water supply, a good sanitation infrastructure, because these are all linked to the productivity of a city. The second example is something that is not by national government, but by cities themselves. Here, it's the New Zealand Core Cities Network, initiated by the cities themselves, thinking about how they can collaboratively build up a business case, increase their collaboration, and formulate some trade partnerships, in this case with China. And last example, again, where this collaborative, I think, aspect is coming to the fore is from the Danube region. Here, again, 5 countries in 5 5 countries and 5 cities. So thinking about how a cross-border collaboration between the cities can inform a common vision, but also a commitment to develop joint development, spatial development strategies. I really make it short, Remy, because you asked for it. So now I come to 3 tools that I would like to offer that every city, every mayor, and I think can apply. Here's first one that we developed, thinking about the underlying need for connectivity between the system of cities. It argues to apply a system-based thinking approach. It looks at investments in hard and soft infrastructure that can create equitable economic growth, connecting cities with their rural hinterland, but also between the cities. It also offers a kind of a connectivity index analysis. So actually, if you are interested to see how, in what sense you are connected, you have at least a set of questions and a set of indicators that can give you an indication of it. The next tool that I would like to approach, unfortunately, it's also, there are many out there, but what are the differences? I think in this one, this looks at, was built for intermediary city or for small and medium-sized cities, whatever, in data scarce environment. It doesn't require big censuses. It doesn't require GIS data. It requires a questionnaire. It requires a process at the local level to think about what kind of public services can increase the productivity of your hybrid economy. Here, again, and this is perhaps the difference, it is really looking at the formal and informal sector, how they contribute, how they link to each other, and how services can provide both sectors to actually grow the economic potential of the city itself. Finally, and I think that's something that is already my last slide, many of those actions that we've just heard, from different speakers, or also in that I was alluding to in support of a system-based approach, will require a very strong national vision and development plan that understands the gaps in service provision in cities, what it creates, what impact that has for the productivity and the advancement of the whole economy and the society, explores the enhanced productivity opportunity in new economic development models. Again, it is not the aim, and it should not be aimed to that every city is part of the global supply chain. We are talking now about, with the systems that we have in place in the climate change crisis, about national and regional economies that need to be strengthened, especially as we've seen in the current environment of COVID-19. A national development plan that acknowledges the relation between cities and rural areas and prioritize investments and actions in a more balanced and efficient manner. And for this, As you can see here, there's already a rich body of guiding principles, guidelines, review of national policies, and the institutional enabling environment for cities that offer practical benchmarks and a set of indicators against which we can assess and inform the national policy environment. Here, I'm looking forward to the launch of the 4th edition of the Cities Enabling Environment Rating of all national governments in Africa that we will launch together with UCIGA at Africities in Kisumu. I think as an urban community that sees the political and social and economic value of linkages between territories, I think we should and can only applaud and further foster an emerging vision in policy and financial decision-making for development that integrates sectorial requirements at the regional level, acknowledging the value chains and interconnectivity between cities of all sizes and their embeddedness in regional circular flows of goods, services, and people. Thank you very much for your attention, and we are looking forward to further deepening our commitment on intermediary cities and the commitment to the agenda, and looking forward to hopefully see you all in person in Kisumu this year. Thank you.